I'm Eric Carabell, and the latest fantasy-focused baseball podcast with Tristan H. Cockcroft. Happy Holidays edition, including Ian Desmond, Adam Eaton, Chris Sale, Lucas Giolito, and lots more, plus Twitter questions. Happy Holidays to all.
First Take fam, we've got good news for you. Starting January 3rd, catch us on a new channel. We're moving to ESPN weekdays 10 a.m. Eastern, and we will see you there. But coming up on this Feel Good Friday, we'll get you ready for a big NFL weekend. Donovan McNabb stops by, along with Giants corner Janoris Jenkins, who has a big game against the Lions. Plus, did Richard Sherman cross the line with his comments about the Seahawks offense? We will explain. And right now, we remember the full life and fighting spirit of one Craig Sager. Good morning. Welcome into First Take on a Friday. Appreciate you hanging with us. And we've got a big Football Friday in store for you. Donovan McNabb will join us, but there is no other place to start than with this. We begin with the passing of a staple on the sideline and a man synonymous with the NBA. Craig Sager has died at the age of 65. Known for his colorful and distinctive suits during his more than 40-year career, the legendary sideline reporter has battled leukemia since he was first diagnosed in 2014. Here's Steve Kerr and Charles Barkley last night.
I felt like I lost a brother today, and I feel great sadness for myself, but I feel so much sadness for his wife, Stacy, and the kids, because this battle, man, there's no person that I've ever met in my life who wanted to live more. I mean, that guy battled so hard. 3 bone marrow transplants had never been done before. And I should tell Ernie, when we used to go see Sager, when you leave the room with Sager, you feel like, is there anything wrong with that guy?
As many of you know, today is a very sad day in the NBA. We lost a dear friend and a big part of the league's soul with the passing of Craig Sager. And I know I speak for a lot of people who worked with Craig and who knew him when I say that nobody had more zest for life and passion and joy the way he lived than Craig. He loved his family, loved his friends, he loved Bud Light, he loved golf, he loved atmospheres like tonight where he came and worked an incredible sporting event. He loved the Cubs. He loved people more than anything. Going out with Craig after games with the crew was always fun. Tonight, we offer condolences to his family, to Stacy and his children. We offer condolences to his colleagues at TNT, many of whom are here tonight working the game. And we mourn his loss, but while we considered a moment of silence, we thought it would be more appropriate, given the way Craig lived his life and the joy that he brought to so many people, to have a moment of joy instead. So I'd like all of you to join me in an applause for a great man and a life well lived. Thank you.
A beautiful spirit and a fighting spirit. His light touched so many. Stephen A. and Max, good morning, guys. I want to start with you, Stephen A. here. How will you remember Craig?
I can't really put it much better than Charles Barkley and Steve Kerr put it. Obviously, they worked with Craig Sager for years. They know him better than me, better than a lot of people, but those of us who have covered the NBA for many years, we know how synonymous he is with the NBA and the world of sports, and we know what a wonderful human being he was. He was always very gentle. He was always very kind. Charles Barkley put it best when he talked about how he was full of life, and he's never met anybody that loved life and wanted to live more than Craig Sager. And so you hear about his passing. It was, it's just devastating to all of us who covered the NBA and who have been around him. When ESPN worked the deal out with Turner to allow Craig Sager to cover his first NBA Finals, I remember LeBron James asking, how in God's name, after all of these years, 20-plus years, have you never covered the NBA Finals until now? It just didn't seem right. It just seemed so perfect when he was there for Game 6 for Cleveland and the Golden State, because it clearly was where he belonged. And I watched him work the arena, just walking around, even beforehand, people wanting to take pictures with him, clamoring for him, thanking him for the strength that he instilled in so many people. To see the standing ovation that he received during the game was incredibly touching. And then when Steve Kerr spoke last night prior to the Knicks game, the Warriors game against the Knicks, Steve Kerr, who, he's a very good man, and we all know that about him, he actually put a smile on my face because by him saying and reminding us all how Craig Sager would have wanted us to conduct ourselves, for it to be a celebration to some degree, it made me smile because I thought about the last time I had spoken to Craig Sager. Craig Sager walked up to me, and we all know, Max and Molly, that he's very well known for the colorful outfits that he wears. And he walked up to me, and like Kobe Bryant said on Mike and Mike earlier today, everyone always looked forward to whatever outfit we were going to see Craig Sager in, because clearly he owned it. He could pull it off. Most of us couldn't. Most of us wouldn't even think about trying. But when it came to him, he would pull it off every time, and he didn't care. This is what he loved. That's how he loved to look. God bless him. And so he came up to me, and he said to me, "Steven, you look great." And I looked around and was like, what's wrong with my outfit? Why is he saying that? I mean, do I have on something wild or whatever the case may be? And that's what I thought about last night. It just put a smile on my face because I remember how I was questioning the outfit that I had on, because he was telling me how good my outfit looked when he saw me at Quickens Loans Arena. And so I just think about it from that perspective. I'm sad for his lovely wife, Stacy, his 5 kids, the TNT family. I know all of those folks, and he was a special man, and he meant a great, great deal to the NBA community, and we're all going to miss him. It's a devastating loss for everybody associated with the NBA, with the world of sports, and for folks out there battling cancer. My words to them, including people like my own mom, is just keep the fight up, keep going, keep pushing. Because Craig Sager certainly did that to the best of his ability. And as sad as it is to see him gone, we owe him an incredible debt of gratitude for the life that he lived and what he was willing to put on display and share with us all. We're all better because of it.
Yeah, I think that Craig Sager's life shows that if you treat people with kindness and you have a sense of humor about yourself and use obstacles and hardships in your own life as a source of inspiration to uplift others, you will be loved. And I think what's most telling about the way Craig Sager lived his life, and I did not know him personally, we crossed paths a couple times, but didn't know him personally, had no personal relationship. And as a basketball fan and as a person who lives in this culture, I was very sad, of course, like everyone else, when I'd heard he'd passed, and was upset even when the news first became public that he was struggling with his illness. I think the greatest tribute is the people who knew him best. The closer they were to him, the more upset they were, the more they loved him. That's not the case with everyone. But in this building, I'm in L.A. now, where I did Sports Nation for 3 years before joining this show, Stephen A. And in this building, everyone was obviously sad and depressed about it. But the people who knew him were weeping, the way Charles Barkley was crying on television. Michelle Beadle and Rachel Nichols were weeping yesterday. And when we discussed how we were going to handle it, because I did Sports Nation for old time's sake while I was here yesterday, I appeared on the show throughout the show, and we had all these things planned, and then the news came out 5 or 10 minutes before we went to air, whatever it was. And the question was, how do we handle something like this? And the decision, at first, maybe we just make the whole thing a tribute to Craig Sager, and the decision ultimately was, what would he do? And how would he want this handled? Probably embarrassed by the attention. But if you look at how he lived his life, he went to work, didn't ask anyone to feel sorry for him, and did his job basically up until the very end without asking for special treatment or anything like that. And so it was decided the best way to honor him and his legacy is to carry on and do the show. So we did a tribute segment off the top, as we are doing here, and discussed it because you can't ignore it, obviously, and then carried on and did the show as he did, as he carried on. I just think, as I said, the greatest tribute to him is you'll notice in the media reaction, people watching at home, the people who knew him best are the ones who will be weeping today.
Well, the thing that resonates with me as well is the great Ernie Johnson, who's a cancer survivor, who would go to see him to fire him up and inspire him. And it turns out that it was the other way around. That's what Craig Sager did for him and so many others. And you think about the battles that people are fighting every single day in an effort to conquer cancer. And you think about the Jimmy V Foundation and what ESPN has been closely associated with and synonymous with for decades. And you think about all of those folks out there in such desperate need, not just of treatment, not just for a cure, but also for inspiration along the journey, along the battles. And then you think about a guy like Craig Sager, who would go to work and work a game at night and then turn around and fly to Houston the next day, the next morning, to receive his chemo, and then depart from there and go right back on the road. And then you sit there and you think about the times that you said to yourself, I'm tired, I'm not feeling well, I can't go, but there's really nothing wrong with you. You knew what was wrong with him, and somehow, some way, he showed up to work every chance he got. And it just serves as the greatest inspiration to all of us about what we can be made of if our heart and our mind is truly committed to something that we love so dearly. And I just think that that's an important message to reap from it all. But again, my heart goes out to his family, his loved ones, the TNT family, thanking Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith, Shaq and the crew, especially to Steve Kerr and that tremendous tribute to Greg Popovich, who spoke very sincerely about him. The man was loved in a great way by anybody associated with the NBA community, and the players, I think, are doing an incredible job of expressing their love and affection to him and their gratitude for all that he means and he meant to the game of basketball.
And I also want to add, Stephen A., our heart also goes out to anybody battling cancer. Our prayers are with them, including your mother as well.
Thank you.
Craig Sager, gone way too soon at the age of 65. He will be missed, but not forgotten.
So I'm not sure that Tony, if it was left up to the owner, I'm not sure if Tony wouldn't be the starter now. Just based on the comments that I've heard here in the last couple of weeks. And I don't understand the comments. I don't understand why you would talk. If Tony ends up getting in the game at some point and playing, great. But to dismiss what a young rookie quarterback has done, you know what would be a great story? What would be a great story is if a rookie quarterback takes his team to a Super Bowl championship. That'd be a great story. The bottom line is winning games. I'm really dumbfounded by the comments, and not only the first time, but why they continue.
That was former Cowboys Hall of Famer Troy Aikman questioning Jerry Jones for continually talking about the quarterback situation in Dallas. Jerry clarified his comments from earlier in the week, saying he unequivocally supports Dak Prescott. Donovan McNabb is with us on a Friday. Who is better than us? Donovan, is the rumor true that we have you every Friday?
Well, yeah, I will be here every Friday, so I look forward to joining the crew. I love what I've seen so far. Just try to add a little bit more firepower and sexiness to the whole deal here before the weekend.
Well, that for sure.
Donovan's bringing sexy back. Stephen A., on a serious note, though, I want to start with you. How bad of a look is this for Jerry?
Well, I think it's a very bad look, and it's something that I've stated continuously. The fact of the matter is Jerry Jones has no business talking about Tony Romo in this fashion. I mean, if you parse Jerry Jones' words, he's essentially said, yes, Dak is the future. We believe in him. We support him. However, for the purposes of this season, if I could get away with it, I would rather Tony Romo be in there than Dak Prescott. And that's basically what he's saying. Well, here's the reality. There's only two ways that Tony Romo can get in the game based on what we're seeing from Dak Prescott. If Dak Prescott suddenly forgot how to play football and was god-awful, or he got hurt. So essentially, if you're Jerry Jones and you keep clamoring for Tony Romo, which is clearly what he's doing, What you're saying is you're wishing for one of those two things. And I'm not going to assume that the man is wishing for Dak Prescott to be hurt. I certainly wouldn't be that irresponsible. Nor am I assuming that he wants the Cowboys to lose, because I understand that too. But I'm just saying to you that as big of a priority as it is for this team to win, it seems to be equally important to him that Tony Romo is the guy captaining the ship and leading the Dallas Cowboys to the promised land in what probably will be his last year in Dallas. That seems to be near the top or at the top of Jerry Jones' wish list, and he appears to have absolutely positively no regard for the rookie quarterback that is Dak Prescott.
This is a bad look for Jerry Jones. Look, our business, criticism of any kind, like the Fourth Estate, the idea of an independent critical press, is based on the idea that a cat can look at a king. No matter how low, I can comment about anybody. Having never played football, I have a right to watch and tell you what I think. And if you don't like it tough, you can judge it on the merits, on the content of what I say. So that's the kind of premise under which we operate. But let me tell you what's much, much worse than just a cat looking at a king. In this case, someone in the press criticizing Jerry Jones, a much bigger problem for him, is an unimpeachable critic looking at the king, looking at the guy with all the power. That is his worst nightmare. Who in modern Dallas Cowboys history has more credibility than Troy Aikman? Maybe Emmitt Smith, but he won the quarterback. I think the answer is no one. This may be the most credible, mouthpiece in modern Cowboys history, taking aim at the owner and saying something that is clearly true. Right. That's got to be Jerry Jones's worst nightmare. It's worse than just another critic. The fact that Troy Aikman is saying this, and it's just clearly the case, is really bad for Jerry Jones. Not as bad as the fact that he said what he said in the first place, and his intentions are clear that he wishes it was Tony Romo. But this highlights it, I think, in a way that nothing else could have.
Let me piggyback on that too, Max. One thing for the fans out there to understand, the guy who usually calls the games for when Dallas is on Fox is Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman, one of the best quarterbacks to ever play in that history over there at the organization of the Dallas Cowboys. And he understands, just like what we see, Dak Prescott is your future. Why try to find a way to bring Tony Romo into the fold? Because what it does is it messes up the chemistry that they've already implanted for the last 10, 12 weeks. Also, now you have to work in a way of kicking the rust off for Tony Romo. And will he stay healthy? Dak Prescott is a guy who's proven each week that not only can he carry the load, but he's shown leadership qualities. He's shown he can make the big play when needed. And when you are down in the 2 minutes to go in the game, you feel confident he's going to lead you back for a win. What I see, and I've said this for the last couple weeks, the problem I have with the Dallas Cowboys is Jerry Jones is the guy who's always talking when the game is over in the locker room. Where is Jason Garrett? Jason Garrett could have ended this 8-9 weeks ago by saying, Dak Prescott is our quarterback, and we're going to go as far as Dak can take us. Not worrying about the backup quarterback, not trying to explain to us how good Tony is looking in practice. But the problem with it all is, if you have your former quarterback in Troy Aikman continue to express why he's trying to figure out why Jerry Jones has his infatuation with Tony Romo to be in there to lead the ship to possibly a championship, this is a great story. But I think Jerry's looking at it financially, saying if Dak Prescott leads us to the Super Bowl, in the next 2 years, not only will I have to pay Ezekiel Elliott if he stays healthy, I'm going to have to pay Dak Prescott, who was a fourth-round draft pick, first-round money. So I'm looking at it in the sense that this is a great story from a fan standpoint about the Dallas Cowboys. But from Jerry Jones' standpoint, he's looking at it financially, how he's going to take a hit.
Well, I'm looking at it, and I'm taking it a step further than that, Donovan. Regardless of the business aspect of it all, we all know that Jerry Jones purchased this franchise for about $140 million, and now it's worth over $2 billion. We get that reality with Jerry Jones. So even though you got a hard salary cap, somehow, somewhere, if you got an elite quarterback, especially if he's young, you're going to figure out a way to make sure he gets paid, even if it's at the expense of other people, obviously. What resonates with me about Jerry Jones isn't that, Donovan. Donovan. What it is the fact that you have not had a Super Bowl since 1995. You have been a walking piece of mediocrity as a franchise for the vast majority of the last 21 years. And even after forcing your fan base to suffer the way that they have suffered, looking as trash as you have looked on too many occasions throughout the last 21 years, now here you come. It's the one thing where you go 12-4, but at the same time, Green Bay is still there, and Seattle's still there, and they're standing in your way, like it was 2 years ago. It's another thing entirely when everyone is looking at you and legitimately saying and designating that the Dallas Cowboys are the favorites to come out of the NFC. You know this, and in the throes of all of this, you talk about Tony Romo with the back surgeries and the collarbones and all of this other stuff, and he can't even play. And you got a young stud who's balling for you, who won 11 straight, and you are clamoring for him to be replaced, even if it appears at the expense of winning. But that is what I find egregious about all of this.
Let me add to that also, Steve. And the thing that bothers me with this whole deal is he couldn't wait for Dak Prescott to mess up, because it's so much of a big story of trying to get Tony Romo into the fold. He's not even looking at around the kid. The kid's a rookie. He's going to play like a rookie. But when you have guys like Dez Bryant dropping balls and fumbling the ball, when you have the offensive line getting beat at the point of attack, which hasn't happened all season, it's not so much on your rookie quarterback, because at some point he was going to look like a rookie quarterback. But what about the guys around him? What did the defense do? The defense, Dak Prescott didn't give up that 60-plus yard touchdown to Odell Beckham. With a lack of running game for the Giants, why was Eli Manning spreading the ball around? Now, a couple of interceptions could have been caught, but it wasn't all Dak Prescott. But to me, it seems like he was waiting on that moment when Dak Prescott didn't play as well as he has over the last 10 or 12 weeks, so that he could kind of bring it up.
I want to bring one more thing up about Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones, because you went back to Stephen A. in recent days to Jimmy Johnson and Barry Switzer. Jerry Jones inherited a team. And Jimmy Johnson really built up the team and had it ready to go, and then gets rid of him for Barry Switzer. At that point, they won another Super Bowl, but likely underachieved based on what they had. And one of the moves that Jerry Jones pulled at the time was he spearheaded the campaign for the salary cap and all that stuff. And once he got it through, on the same day they signed Deion Sanders. And no one could figure out how they did it. And that's the whole bonus structure. How can you afford Deion Sanders? No, we're prorating that bonus over this number of years. And so it doesn't, like he installed the salary cap and then figured out a way around it. And that may have been the last clever thing he did in terms of manipulating the business to his advantage. He's been very good at extracting a profit. He's been very good at building the equity of the franchise and of the league, by the way. He's been a powerful force for business expansion in the league from a very good point of view if you're the NFL and the idea is to make money. But in terms of the product on the field, since then, since he took too much control, they haven't been good. And it wasn't until Stephen Jones came and kind of wrested control and started drafting the offensive linemen that they've gotten good again. And this is why it's a particularly bad look, because right at the moment when it looks like they might run the table, Stephen A., as you said, the accident waiting something to go wrong will go wrong. Yep. He steps in and tries to mess it up, it seems. And the fact that it's Troy Aikman calling him on it, it's just, I can't imagine a worse look for Jerry Jones right now.
Yeah, cause for concern there. And speaking of the business aspect, the organization is worth $4.2 billion, just to be exact. So we all know Jerry cannot stop talking. But Stephen A., what kind of damage is this doing to the Cowboys as a team?
Well, I think the damage is potentially devastating, because you're ultimately going to force people to take sides. And Donovan, not to bring up a bad experience, but you can relate to where I'm going. You know exactly where I'm going with
thanks,
this.
Stephen A. Thanks, Stephen A.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. Welcome to the show. Here's the deal. You got a quarterback in your locker room. Now, in your case, it was T.O., it was you, that kind of thing. In this instance, the team can rally together, and Tony Romo is not causing this distraction. It's Jerry Jones. But nevertheless, you're going to have players who feel compelled to go up to that rookie and say to him, "We got you. keep doing your thing. You know we believe in you, blah, 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 blah. While you clearly have others that may be fantasizing about the possibility of Tony Romo being that quarterback. Like, for example, far be it for me to bring this up, Dez looked bad last week. And not only that, he ain't the greatest route runner in the world to begin with. I don't know this, but who's to say that Dez Bryant isn't one of the individuals clamoring for Tony Romo, since that's the quarterback he's enjoyed the most success with? You got to think about stuff like that when you hear the owner, because you got to wonder, is Jerry Jones doing this on his own, or is Jerry Jones also doing it because he's had private conversations with some of those players who are clamoring for Tony Romo's concern? These are the things that we have to ask ourselves.
Let me add to that, since you brought the whole quarterback receiver combo into the mix. Who's the favorite player on the football team when it comes to offensive players coming off on a 3-and-out or possibly interception? It's the backup quarterback. Who has Dez had the most success with so far, throughout his career, when it came to passing the ball? It's the backup quarterback, Tony Romo. So I look at it in a sense, I'm not pointing the finger at Dez. Like, I don't know exactly, but I know Dez isn't happy of the production that he's had over the last couple of weeks when it comes to catches and big yards and big plays that we've seen. Now, who will not complain? Cole Beasley, also Jason hard-hitting Witten, as the catches continue to pile up. Now, the thing that I'm looking at when it comes to splitting a locker room, so to speak, because of this whole situation, if the media continues to bring up the fact that if Dak Prescott struggles over the next couple weeks, then it could be a perfect opportunity for them to slide Tony Romo into the mix. What happens, people in the locker room begin to see that and hear that on TV. They're answering questions about it. And there are guys who were there, a part of the team when they lost to Green Bay over the controversial catch, where they felt like they could have went to the Super Bowl that particular year. And now it starts to dwindle in their mind that this could be a great redemption year for a guy like Tony Romo to come in and lead them to the Super Bowl. Now, can Dak do it? Well, we'll see. But the question is, you talked about it before. They have been a walk-in mediocrity over the last couple years, not because of the team that they had, but they just couldn't win the big game when they needed it. So I'm looking more in the sense of who's going to talk now from this point on, because if Troy Aikman's calling you out, I'm pretty sure Emmett's on his way of calling them out as well. And will Michael Irving do the same thing, which I don't think he will, because he has a receiver mentality who Jerry Jones definitely loves.
I want to talk about, listen, the question is, how does this damage the Cowboys? Does it damage them? I think the answer is actually no, Donovan and Stephen A., because of Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott from the first preseason game, and a lot of times this is BS. You see a guy and you go, I like the cut of his jib. I like the way he carries himself. He looks like a leader to me. He has the intangibles. But damn if that wasn't true about Dak Prescott, right? From the first preseason game, you go, I hate to say it, but the Cowboys maybe they got something here. How did all these teams miss this guy? He had it as soon as you saw him the first time. And that's played out to such an extent that people are kind of dubious or skeptical about his QBR even, because he is so much of a kind of intangibles guy, it seems to me, the way Tom Brady was early in his career, Russell Wilson, even Roethlisberger early on, that they're the kind of guys where you're like, don't look at the numbers too much. The numbers won't tell you the whole story. And so when I brought up, until a couple weeks ago, Dak Prescott's leading the league in QBR, it's a little surprising. He seems like the kind of guy who might not have the best QBR, but is winning based on the intangibles. Not because his play is bad, but because that's how strong his leadership qualities appear to be, and that comes across on television, let alone, I imagine, the locker room. So the question as to the damage this causes, I think speaks to the leadership on the team. And I know he's a rookie, and I hope it doesn't happen, but one day a rookie will win the Super Bowl. And, boy, it looks like Dak Prescott is a good candidate to be the first. Well, his leadership qualities, Stephen A., tell me that they will be able to handle this better than a team without a guy like that under center.
Here's why you're wrong. Because you're thinking about Dak, not the 52 other players in the locker room.
Part of being
the
a leader.
52 other players in the locker room who will go, and they will be divided in terms of who will take sides, who would prefer Dak, who will prefer Romo. That's the problem. It's not Dak. Dak may be very poised, and Jerry Jones is right to talk about how he's not worried about Dak Prescott's fragility. But that's where Jerry Jones is misguided, because he's thinking about how it's going to affect that player directly as opposed to how it's going to affect the other dudes in the locker room who communicate with that guy. Go ahead, Donovan.
Yeah, the whole thing about it that, Max, you don't understand, we can talk from a fan standpoint of people only outside looking in. But what about the people in that locker room? People in that locker room got wives and kids at home. All they're thinking about is winning the Super Bowl and making money. And the thing about over the last couple of years is their relationship with Tony has continued to grow. Now, Dak has just gotten there.
How many Super Bowls they won with Tony, Donovan?
Well, the whole thing, listen, people love Tony. Tony would take him out to dinner. Tony would buy him presents.
But you just said the motivation is to win and to blow up in the playoffs. Dak, I mean, listen, like, how many times have they done that with Tony? Never took him anywhere.
If your boss continues to put in your mind you have the best chance of winning with one particular guy, every time the one that's in there continues to mess up, you're going to look over at him and say, you know what? It's going to happen at some point.
Continues to mess up 2 games to the Giants. That's it.
It doesn't matter.
To the Giants. And they're close.
But see, this is the thing about it, Max, is you understand how powerful the media is. And it becomes such a big story when we talk about it. It's the locker room that's going to talk about it as well.
Yeah, you don't hear a lot of divided locker rooms winning a Super Bowl, and that potentially could be their demise.
Donovan is absolutely right.
I'm Eric Carabell, and the latest fantasy-focused baseball podcast with Tristan H. Cockcroft. Happy Holidays edition, including Ian Desmond, Adam Eaton, Chris Sale, Lucas Giolito, and lots more, plus Twitter questions. Happy Holidays to all.
I don't like when we throw the ball at the 1. We throw an interception at the 1. You know, luckily it went incomplete, and I wasn't going to let them continue to do that.
Were you having that chat with Bevel, or who were you?
I was letting Pete know.
Oh, you were? Oh.
Yeah, I was making sure Pete knew that we're not comfortable with you throwing the ball at the 1. We've already seen how that goes. We've seen that. I'm sure you guys have seen that play enough times.
True story. Richard Sherman has never been one to mince words, and last night he didn't hold back either. After his team decided to throw on 1st and goal from the 1, the same thing they did that cost them the Super Bowl. Stephen A., did Sherman cross the line?
No, he did not.
Oh.
No, he did not. I know it's not something that's popular. I get it. And I understand that you have to guard what you do publicly, because you certainly don't want to show up a coordinator or a boss. But I remember when they lost this Super Bowl to the New England Patriots, Donovan, and one of the things that I came on the air the next day and said, I don't know if this team will ever recover from the residue, the stench of that emotion that loss left behind. Because you got to remember what led to it. So here you are, you got that great acrobatic catch by Curse, okay?
Right.
And then prior to that, a couple of plays prior to that, you hit Marshawn Lynch beast mode down the left sideline. So then after the Curse catch, what do? You give beast mode the ball. He runs 4.5 yards down to the 1 yard line, down to the half-yard line. This is beast mode, for Christ's sakes. And you call a pass play. I mean, you could debate whether or not Pete Carroll wanted beast mode, Russell Wilson to be the star instead of beast mode. We could get into all of those things. I'm not going there. But what I am saying is that when you make a decision like that cost a team the Super Bowl championship, nothing's ever the same. But the players are still there. This is not a new team. The Legion of Boom, sans Earl Thomas, is still the Legion of Boom. They're all there. And they're like, wait a minute, we handling business, we holding down the fort, and you ain't learned from this? Come on, coach.
All right.
Come on.
All right, here we go.
I ain't got no problem with that.
Here we go.
I don't have no problem with
it. First of all, you want to go back to the Super Bowl. You did account for 8 guys on the line of scrimmage, and that meant they were going all-out blitz and man on the outside. You bring up Curse and the acrobatic catch that he made. If Curse would have been able to get off of press coverage off of Browner to come inside of Butler, that would have been a walk in the end zone. It was actually a great play call by Darryl Bevell.
Am I hearing you? Am I hearing you correct? You're saying that was a great call.
That was a great
from the half-yard line.
Yes, that was a great horrible call. Because they went 8 guys on the line of scrimmage. That meaning all-out blitz. They were going to clog up the gaps. And all you would have seen was they would have had to go to the next play. What Bill Belichick did to Pete Carroll in that sense is he played a mind control game on him. He was going to allow him to score because he felt like they couldn't stop their offense and Tom was going to drive down the score. Some of the same scenarios that he did against the Giants, and it didn't work out well for him when he allowed them to score. This is the situation I have. I have a problem with Richard Sherman's comments because if you want to go back to that game and you want to watch the film against the Rams, how many guys were wide open, but Keenan and also Jared Goff just couldn't connect on them? Why don't we focus on that? Why is it that all of a sudden your second and third corner continue to get abused if you can't get the pass rush there? Focus on that. Now, we know as the fans and former players who are now analysts on each TV show, we can talk about the lack of run game that you have. We can talk about the offensive line and how they struggle. Defensively, they haven't been the same pretty much as Earl Thomas went down, but you need to focus on your second and third corner while they continue to get abused. Now, offensive line continues to struggle when they play against guys like we've seen with Michael Bennett back, Cliff Avrils playing well. Now you got Wagner and those guys getting to the quarterback. But yet still, for a defensive player, it's beyond you to focus on what the offense is doing. We've seen that before. Yeah, well, we've seen guys get big plays on your defense, too. Let the offense handle their business, and you handle your business on defense. No. I always have a problem when defensive players get into the media and talk about what they did or what they should have done. No, leave that alone and keep it for in-house.
You are one of the great and underrated quarterbacks of all time. But you are wrong about this, and Stephen
Absolutely
A.
not.
And it pains me to say it. Stephen A. is right about this one. He's right about this one. Here's the thing about Pete Carroll, in case you haven't noticed, Donovan McNabb. The secret sauce on Seattle is that he allows his players to be themselves. And as a result, not only do they reciprocate loyalty, but they play loose and they play free, and they're able to optimize their ability. So that's one. And Richard Sherman is a part of that culture, one of the leaders of that culture, and it's had more success than any other culture in the NFC since Pete Carroll and Richard Sherman have been there. So that's one. Two, when you talk about running plays from goal line, basically, in big situations, it recalls an emotionally devastating moment for the team. Now, you may be right. I will accept your representation over Stephen A's, for example, that it was actually a good play call. I also disagree with you there, but you know a lot more about football than we do. So I will defer to you there. That's not even, for the sake of this argument, that's not even the point, technically, whether it was good or bad. It was an emotionally devastating moment that stuff like this harkens back to. So Richard Sherman is fine. I'm not saying he's right or wrong, but he's fine bringing it up. He's on solid footing. And the fact that Pete Carroll has fostered an atmosphere where Richard Sherman feels free to bring that up is one of the keys to Seattle's success. I do not think Richard Sherman crossed the line at all. You're wrong, Donovan McNabb.
So wait a minute. So if Russell Wilson comes out and say we need to play press coverage on the outside because receivers are running wide open, are we going to say the same thing when Russell Wilson says that? No, we're going to say he needs to focus on what the offense is doing. And then let's get to the run game. Why they should have ran the football. Did you see Rawls running the ball last night? Is he still hurt? What is the problem with the run game for Seattle? So what are you going to run?
The O-line?
Half yard, 2 yard? They can't even get that.
Hold on, Max. Donovan, here's the point that you're missing. I would have a huge problem with Richard Sherman if Richard Sherman walked up to another player going off or went to the media or anybody else or was parading on the sideline going off at a player. Richard Sherman wasn't doing that. What Richard Sherman was doing was saying to the coaches, yo, we saw that before. It cost us a Super Bowl championship. Because he was answering the question because they saw him getting in their face on the sidelines. So he was saying to them, what he was saying to them is, wait a minute, don't you dare do that to us again. Stop playing that, coach. Stop playing that. I don't have a problem with that.
Come on. If that's the case, Stephen A., then why did he go to Pete Carroll and say, why are we up 3 touchdowns and we running a fake punt? We got our kicker killed.
Well, that's a whole
got killed.
That, by the way, that's a whole separate issue. I agree with you there. But Pete Carroll was wrong about that. But now you're saying because Richard Sherman didn't hold his feet to the fire about something else, he shouldn't say what's on his mind?
He was wrong about that. How was Pete Carroll wrong for trying to throw the ball to Jimmy Graham, who was killing the Rams all day.
Why a fake punt? Up
Yeah,
three
he was up
touchdowns?
3 touchdowns. The reason he went for
Late
the
in the
fake
game?
punt was because it was the same opportunity that happened with the Rams. It's just the punter underthrew the receiver. That would have been another big play for the Rams. But then you run a fake punt. You run a fake punt when you have 3 touchdowns. That's what Richard Sherman should have focused on. Why are we doing
But
different
you know what?
things
I want to
game?
answer that, Donovan. I want to answer that because I think it's related to the Russell Wilson question you asked before, rhetorically, I think. You know, if Russell Wilson says something, what would we say? Part of this is also based on what we know about the player, who they are. When guys are true to their own identities, and I think that's part of what, it's not that Pete Carroll fosters an atmosphere, everyone pop off. It's Pete Carroll fosters an atmosphere where players feel comfortable being themselves, being individuals, and they come together as a team. Russell Wilson is not the popping off type. If he were to do that, we would scratch our heads a little because we'd say, wait a minute, that's out of character for him. But it's in character for Richard Sherman, and the fact that he's allowed to be himself is part of their success.
And that's a problem, Max. That's the whole problem. When guys sit there and they feel free because they're comfortable with speaking out, that begins to separate locker rooms. When they're on the sideline arguing as a defense, who had to break it up? Yes, it was Cam Chancellor who had to break it up and try to bring everybody together. When you continue to express how you feel through the media, now other guys have to answer the question, and now that separates the locker room.
They seem to be doing pretty good.
That's fair.
They seem to be doing pretty good.
Winning cures everything.
Hold on, Max.
Winning cures everything.
That's fair, Donovan. That's fair, but here's the macro perspective in it all. We are the number 2 seed. We might end up being the number 2 seed in the NFC. We are in position to possibly get to another Super Bowl. Don't try the same nonsense. Don't do that to us this time. I told you this was going to come back. You can call that a great call all you want to. My issue with that Super Bowl call, Donovan, was his willingness to throw it right over the middle. How come you can't throw it to the corner of the end zone or something where the risk is minimal in terms of a potential turnover? That's just common sense and intelligence.
The middle was wide open, Stephen A.
Excuse me, evidently it was not.
Yeah,
evidently it was not.
Inside. Kurtz got jammed up by Browner. He's supposed to come inside to shield Butler.
Then it wasn't wide open, Donovan. Donovan, it wasn't wide open because he got jammed up by Butler. That's the point.
Then it's on Kurtz. It's not on Russell Wilson.
Well, listen. I'm not saying Russell Wilson. I said Pete Carroll in the call. That's why Richard Sherman said what he said. Watch that call. Don't be playing these games at the 1 yard line. Run the damn
Donovan,
ball.
how do you let Stephen A. do you like that in a football topic? Come on, B.
Very troubling story out of Missouri. The predominantly white school district of Warrensburg is apologizing after a student waved a Donald Trump campaign sign during player introductions for an all-minority Kansas City basketball team. Video shows several students, many wearing cowboy hats, turning their backs on the visiting team while they were introduced. The Warrensburg School District apologized in its official Facebook page earlier this week, saying it would try to prevent similar incidents like this in the future. Superintendent Scott Patrick tells the Kansas City Star the back turning is a long-standing practice, but the campaign sign, quote, took this from something that was unsportsmanlike to something that was insensitive, not necessary, and inappropriate. Warrensburg Schools District is 80% white. The Center District is 19% white. Stephen A., this makes me sick. What is your reaction?
Well, my reaction is that I think it was perfectly explained when the individual that you just quoted talked about how it's a long-standing tradition for them to actually turn their back to the opposition. It wasn't until the actual Trump sign was hoisted by somebody that it became racially insensitive and beyond. If you're turning your back to an opponent and that's your tradition to sort of disrespect them and create some kind of hostile working environment for the opponent, oh, I've seen people do crazy stuff, no question about it. I remember when Olden Polynice years ago got himself in trouble trying to steal records when he was in college and he went to Duke, and the fans at Duke at Cameron Indoor Stadium literally threw records on the court to mock him and things of that nature. They did crazy stuff, and it was all in fun. This wasn't because of that Trump sign, which brings us to our president-elect and what we're looking at here. And it's one of those situations where
The president-elect is going to have to stand up at some point and acknowledge responsibility for a base, a segment of our population out there that he was more than willing to cater to in order to garner votes. You're going to have people who think he's racist. You're going to have people who think he's not. Right now, that conversation is counterproductive because he will be our president of the United States. But what it is important to recognize is the fact that you had no inhibitions whatsoever about peeling, even if it's to a small segment of our populace, a segment of our populace that clearly harbors those feelings and basically adds credence and substance to the proclamation made by Van Jones of CNN the night of the election on November 9th, when he said, and he called it a white lash. Now, there are white people out there who got offended, and they should be offended if indeed he were not talking about them, because he's alluding to them just by virtue of you being white and you voting for Trump. You must have felt a certain way. I think that's not fair to a lot of white Americans out there who may have had different reasons for voting for who they voted for. But to the folks who did vote for Trump, who do harbor those sentiments, who do feel that level of vitriol towards different ethnicities, Trump has to stand up, man up, and acknowledge that indeed he didn't mind catering to those, or at the very least address them more fervently, more vehemently in decrying the positions that they take. Because the more divisive we are as a nation under his presidency, the more difficult it's going to be for him or for Congress and the Senate or beyond to get things done and move this nation in a forward direction. This is emblematic of the problems that await, because there are white individuals out there who have supported Donald Trump, who believe, hey, it's us against everybody else in America. We don't like them, and we have someone who supports our racist, bigoted, prejudiced views, and we don't care because we feel the freedom now to express it. By the way, Max, that never happened under Barack Obama. You didn't see people out there going like this. Well, because Barack Obama's our president, we're going to convey these points of views, and this is how we feel. That's not what I saw.
Well, there was plenty of
seeing it now.
There was plenty of racist coverage of Barack Obama's presidency. Let's call it what it is.
Okay. Now I'm talking about the
I want to take.
I understand.
I want to take this one at a time. One. If the explanation is, as you stated, that this is a tradition that they do, there happened to be a Trump sign there because that's their guy, okay, I'm going to table some other things to say about that for a second, and it's a misunderstanding. It was put together in a way that made it seem racist when it wasn't. Okay, that's one explanation. I hope that's the case, as a matter of fact. If it's the case that this actually reflects that it wasn't such a misunderstanding, and it reflects some racist feelings, then I would say shame on the parents of the students who did it, because it reflects a broken culture in the home. And if it is not that, but it's not about the home, but rather about these kids acting independently, and in fact it was meant in some racist way, then again, shame on the parents. Do a better job raising your kids. But I'm hoping that the latter two are not the case, that in fact it is some kind of a misunderstanding, and it doesn't reflect a broken culture in the home or a culture of negligence as it relates to raising children. I mean, these are high school kids. And I'm not saying that all Trump supporters are racist, bad people, Stephen A. You and I agree about that. But at the very least, his candidacy and then election has emboldened, or has seemed certainly to embolden, some very bad elements in our midst, racist elements included. And when you say that he really needs to denounce that more vociferously, he has at one point said, hey, that's terrible, in an early interview after the election, that's terrible, people shouldn't do that. But he should be coming out and saying, hey, in terms of my supporters who feel this way, that's bad, you shouldn't do that, and I want to distance myself from that. The question is, why hasn't he done that more? And the answer could be, if you look at the numbers, that it represents a bigger percentage of his support than many want to recognize.
Well, that's definitely possible. I just don't know whether or not that's factually correct, but it might be. I'm not so sure. My only point is, and I want to make sure that I'm clear to piggyback off the students turning their backs. I was talking about the tradition of turning your back on an opponent is something they didn't reserve for an all-black team coming to visit. According to the reports, they do it to any opponent that walks into their building when the team is introduced. The only aberration that took place was that for a Trump sign was hoisted on this particular night. And that's what changed the whole, visual of the situation, the whole imagery of the situation, which is why we're talking about it. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is that, again, when Van Jones talked about the election being whitewashed, being a whitewash, and that's what it was. This gives credence to that kind of argument because we're hearing people coming out that clearly feel emboldened because he's the president, and as a result, they think because he's going to be the president that things are going to change back to the way they used to be, which is code in the African American community to feel something entirely different. It's what we cannot ignore. We have to pay attention to. You and I both know that. This is an example of that, and he needs to address it.
And incidentally, whether or not the candidate or the president-elect or a president or elected official is in fact themselves racist, because you've dealt with Donald Trump, so have I, by the way, and I have not found that to be the case. He was a New Yorker and all this stuff, so we were familiar. If you lived in New York for years with the tabloids, and he was everywhere, and that's not what most people will tell you, that they think that he is actually racist. However, if enough supporters or enough of your support come from people who harbor those kind of feelings, then I agree with you, of course, and with conscientious people that he needs to use his influence among that lot to give them a better understanding of the right way to be, and not to embolden their lesser kind of instincts, but instead appeal to their better angels, even if appealing to their better angels is not how he got elected.
We got a good one this weekend between the Broncos and the Pats. The Patriots have been a bit thin at wide receiver this season, carrying just 4 true wideouts, 1 fewer than the norm. That led to yesterday's claiming of Michael Floyd, who was waived by Arizona following his DUI arrest earlier this week. Now, Floyd was the Cardinals' 2012 first-round draft choice. New England now inherits the remainder of his contract, about $1.2 million, which expires after the 2016 season. Stephen A., yesterday, Floyd was the subject of your final take. Do you think this is a bad look for New England?
I don't think it's a bad look for New England. I think that New England has a reputation for taking chances. It's not like Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft, more importantly, is going to tolerate any kind of transgressions or anything that's going to bring a black mark to the franchise. And so when you look at it from that perspective, Michael Floyd, you're playing with house money if you're the New England Patriots, because after just getting cut from the Arizona Cardinals, unceremoniously, I might add, with reports hinting towards and indicating that the problem may actually go deeper than a particular DUI that had him arrested on Monday along with not obeying a police officer. If there's residue there, if there's a longer list of things to be concerned about, then the likelihood is that it's going to reveal itself and he's going to be out of this league. But if it's been grossly exaggerated, or more importantly, he's able to address and ultimately eradicate the things that people are concerned about, then the New England Patriots have a quality receiver who's a big target for Tom Brady. And when you consider the fact that Rob Gronkowski is out, but you still have Martellus Bennett, you still have Edelman, you still have Hogan and the crew, and you can add another big target receiver to the mix that's capable of playing slot for you, that's capable of being another big target along with Bennett. It puts the New England Patriots in prime position to exploit the opportunity that was available to them and to maximize it to the nth degree. I don't think you have anything to lose here. It's low risk, high reward. I see no way that this works against the Patriots.
Well, it's a bad look for the Patriots from a kind of broader moral position. Look, Arizona was lauded by us and others for being true to their kind of principles, or to just good principles when they had a zero tolerance policy for drunk driving, which is, by the way, look, I'm fairly sympathetic to the idea that when your judgment is impaired, you make bad decisions. So I understand sometimes people find themselves in those situations. But I am not sympathetic to driving drunk because look, I have a family. I'm on the road with my 3 daughters. I have zero tolerance for that stuff, and I'm appreciative of an organization that says, no, we're not going to let you endanger, forget about yourself, others on the road, including children in their cars. So if you do that, goodbye. The Patriots pick up a receiver. Now, what do we think whenever the Patriots make a move? Naturally, since they are the best franchise by far, year in and year out, they're better than everybody else. We think, boy, that guy must be good, right? That's really what it's commentary on. When the Patriots pick up a player, we go, that's actually a good player. Hard to know in football all the time who is good and who is not good, who is benefiting from a system and who can actually ball. When the Patriots pick someone up, you go, well, at the very least, they see a way they can use that guy. He must have some ability that's actually good, not just that looked good. So it looks good for Floyd. It looks good for the Patriots in terms of improving their lot, and it makes us cynical in a sense because we look and go, aha, see, Arizona thinks it's about anything other than football, and the Patriots just showed them, suckers, right? They actually got a good player. But if you're a Patriots fan, you might like that. But for everybody else, hey, Arizona was trying to enforce a code of conduct that we should be supporting, and they were undermined by the Patriots because the guy can play. Now, I know the response to that is, and maybe I shouldn't anticipate it, but the response to that generally in these situations is, this is the reality. If you can play, someone's going to pay you to play.
Well,
and if you give up on that player, someone else is just going to scoop him up. Fine. But that's only if a team like the Patriots does scoop him up.
Well, you're absolutely right. You shouldn't anticipate the response, nor should you care. You feel the way you feel. The hell with what anybody thinks. That's point number one. Point number two, the ethics of the Arizona Cardinals are entirely different than the ethics of the New England Patriots. But let's also analyze why. Yes, Bruce Arians and Michael Bidwell and those boys, I'm saying, let me explain why. Yes, Bruce Arians and Michael Bidwell may have a different code of ethics, but maybe, just maybe, it's because they're trying to install a standard that the New England Patriots already have. You might come to the New England Patriots with problems, but when are you causing problems once you arrive in New England and are allowed to stay? That's the difference. And so it's one thing if New England took you on board and then let you go out there and drink and drive, and then let you go out there and act up, and then let you go out there and be lawless and engage in criminal activity or, unlawful activity or whatever the case may be, and kept you on the roster. No, New England doesn't do that. What they say is that whatever problems you had there, we're going to give you a semi-clean slate. Semi from the perspective that you will not be judged by what you did once you arrive here, so long as you don't repeat it.
And that's
but the
fine.
second you repeat it, you're going to be treated like a repeat offender, and we're going to get you up out of here.
And that's
what
fine.
They do. I have no
that's
problem with
fine
it.
If it happens at some point later than before the ink is dry on the release. It's one thing if he didn't play this season or he played for someone else or whatever, but the idea that, hey, as long as you don't do it here, you're okay, as though they're going to ignore the behavior that actually occurred just now, is to say that it is an extremely cynical position. Now, if I was a Patriots fan, by the way, I would think, suckers, I got a good player. But for everybody else, all the Patriots did was undermine a team that was enforcing a code of conduct that we should be supporting.
Max Kellerman, this happened Monday. We heard the police report. We haven't heard from Michael Floyd's lawyer. The case hasn't been decided.
That's a fair point.
It's still pending and ongoing. We don't know what's going to happen. What we do know is that he's no longer on the Arizona Cardinals. He's free, so we might as well get him, and we'll deal with whatever they decide to bring for.
So is it a good or a bad look from a football point of view?
I said no.
It's actually a better look for Michael Floyd than anybody else because the Patriots think he's good, which means he's good. I mean, that's the best look. But from a kind of ethical point of view, not a great look for the Patriots.
I think we knew that.
Guys,
of course it's good for him. He was unemployed. Now he's employed.
Let's get
Who
into the
doesn't know
game.
that?
The Patriots are playing in Mile High.
Okay.
We know Tom Brady struggles there. He lost his last 3 on the road. Stephen A., who do you think wins?
Well, I'm rolling with the Patriots in this one. I just don't have a lot of faith in Denver right now. Their running game isn't the same since C.J. Anderson went down. Trevor Siemian has come down to earth. He's not the heir apparent like everybody thought he was, even though he's decent. He's not garbage, okay? And then from a defensive standpoint, their secondary is elite. But their defense against the run, along with their ability to defend tight ends, are question marks. So when I think about Blunt with Deion Lewis out of the backfield, when I think about Martellus Bennett there, even though Gronk is not, when I think about the pickup of Floyd, even if he doesn't play, you still got Hogan and Edelman up in there. And we're talking about Tom Brady. I just think it's one of those situations where it could be tight for it or what have you, but I see the New England Patriots figuring out a way to win this game. I'm going to pick them to win this game somewhere along the lines of 24-16, 24-17.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to do it, but co-sign on that. New England's going to run it right at Denver with LeGarrette Blount, and that's going to set up play action for Brady, and that'll be all she wrote.
All right, New England's favored by 3, and that one will be interesting to see if they get Michael Floyd in there. Coming up a little later in the show, it'll be Stephen A's final take. Mr. Smith, or I should say Dr. Smith, what will you be talking about today?
Well, obviously, the story of the day is Craig Sager. It's a devastating loss for all of us, but there is something for all of us to take from him departing from us, and it's something that I'm going to bring up. I think it's very important, and I think it's something that's important to say. So that's exactly what I will do at the end of the show.
I'm Jamel Hill, and on the latest His and Hers podcast, Michael Smith and I give you what you've finally been waiting for. Other than an actual podcast, we break down HBO's Insecure.
The New York Football Giants have spent big money on 3 free agents this offseason, and all 3 have paid off so far, especially our next guest, who has 3 interceptions this season, picking off Aaron Rodgers and Dak Prescott, and is coming off a huge game against Dallas, handing the Cowboys their second and only 2 losses of the season. We welcome Janoris Jenkins to First Take. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Janoris, let's talk about that Cowboys game. Dez Bryant is clearly not the same receiver when he plays your team. He has just 2 catches for 18 yards in 2 games against New York. How were you able to shut him down?
Well, I stuck with the game plan. We played together as a defense. And I just try to not to get my hands on him exactly, just mirror him off the line, because I noticed that when you try to press him and get your hands on him, he like to push off and, try to get open.
Janoris, there's a lot of press on you recently, in the last couple days. It seems like that there's a push in the media to expose you to the fans, etc. And one of the things that's come out is you don't like to be called Janoris. You like to be called Jackrabbit, correct?
Right, man. I like to be called Jackrabbit.
Now, how long has this been going on?
It's been going on since my freshman year in college. I went to school early in January at the University of Florida. And my coach just threw me out there. I ain't know no plays. And I was so happy to make a few plays. And we got in the film room, and he was like, "This kid moving. Boy, you moving like a jackrabbit." And ever since that day, I stuck with it.
Janoris, I want to go back to the game against the Cowboys this past Sunday. I mean, I'm looking at you guys. Dak Prescott targeted you 8 times. You only gave up 2 catches. You had an interception. You forced a fumble. I want to know, what was the mentality for you guys going into the Dallas Cowboys game? Was it just something pivotal that y'all had to do, having to win that game, or were y'all tired of all of this talk about the Cowboys?
Oh, man, we just went in just to be the best defense on the field that night, man. And I can say we did. We played together. Everybody swarmed to the ball. And we made plays.
Jackrabbit.
Right.
Coming into
Right,
this
Max.
season, when the Giants gave you that huge contract, I'm a Giants fan, a big Giants fan, and my thought was, boy, he's a good corner, but he's like a risky corner. Just watching, the Rams as much as I did, he'll gamble. I don't know if he's a shutdown guy. Boy, it's a lot of money to give a guy who I thought of as maybe a B-plus kind of corner. Watching you this year, you're playing like an A-plus. Now, is that me not paying close enough attention, or is there actually a qualitative difference in your game this year?
Oh man, I can say it's kind of both. I was at St. Louis and good organization, but I feel like somebody always had to make a play over there, and I wanted to be that guy because we always either down by 21 or in a close game where somebody needs to make a play to where I'm here at the Giants and I can just play within the scheme, because I depend on my offense. I know we got a good offense, and I just play within the scheme and then play to the best of my ability.
So playing with better players has made you a better player, in other words?
It's not better player. It's just not playing from behind all the time or not playing in a close game or things like that. Not having to jump routes because somebody got to make a play.
Is that coaching staff you're talking about or organizational differences between the Giants and the Rams?
It's just probably, I'll just say, the coordinators, it's different.
Jackrabbit, I want to get to you personally because Max alluded to it to some degree. Coming into this season with the New York Giants after 4 years in St. Louis, you were labeled to be a boom or a bust. You could make plays, you could make things happen, but also it was only a couple of guys like Screen and Patrick Patterson that had given up more touchdowns than you coming into this season. When you came to the New York Giants, were you on what kind of personal mission were you on, considering the experiences that you had in St. Louis over the previous 4 years?
Oh man, shine when the lights on, man. That's it. Just come out and play hard, play the best of my ability, and do my job. Each week, coach calling me to do what I got to do, and he always tell me. Either me or DRC can be the one to change the game, and just go out and play hard.
Jackrabbit, you can do what you do because of practice, obviously, and you guys working on things there. What's it like going against Odell Beckham day in and day out?
It's competitive, man. I mean, we both like to compete. We understand that either he gonna make a play, I'm gonna make a play some days. He gonna get the best of me, I'm gonna get the best of him. But at the end of the day, we were making each other better. We live by iron sharpening iron around here, and I think that's what we do a lot.
Where do you guys believe you are right now? When we look at the NFC, we've been talking about the Cowboys. No one can ignore the Seattle Seahawks. But at the same time, the Giants are right in the thick of things, along with Tampa and Detroit and everybody else. So what I'm asking you is, where do the Giants, who missed the playoffs 6 of the last 7 years, where does this Giants organization believe it is right now in terms of the upper echelon of the NFL, and particularly the NFC?
Oh, man, I ain't gonna put no place out there, but I'm gonna say, like I've been telling everybody, we can be special as we want to be. All we got to do is focus on one game at a time and be the best unit on the field, whether it come offense, defense, or special teams.
Jackrabbit, there's, as a Giants fan, I've noticed that in the NFL you have some very good ownership, especially in northeastern teams with family traditions like the Maras, like the Rooneys in Pittsburgh. Stephen A. is a big Steelers fan. And you were quoted recently, in the last day or so, as saying that Kroenke, on the Rams, you weren't even supposed to look at him if he was in camp. If he was walking through, you were supposed to not even talk to him or anything like that. And you contrasted that with the culture around the Giants. Can you speak to that a little bit?
It's just different, man. I mean, St. Louis is a great organization. It's nothing that was bad over there, but it's just different. And here in New York, it's winning. Everybody want to win. Everybody want to go out and make that play that can't nobody on the other team make. And it just made me feel like I'm home.
It's
Jack
good
Rabbit,
to have
I'm gonna personally let you off the hook when you say that the Rams are a great organization. I'm going to just let that go. I'm going to let that go. I'm going to let you slide on that, bro. And I'm going to stick with the New York Giants here. Come on, Jack Rabbit.
The organization
a great
is
organization,
man.
the Rams.
The people behind the building, the people behind everything. They're great people. They're good people.
My bad.
They're good people.
I'm not talking about them. You know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the dude that just got bounced out of there. But that's a different subject for another day. That's a different subject for another day.
Okay. We'll save that for later then.
How does it feel to be the only team in the NFL that beat the Cowboys since they're the leaders in your division?
Cool. Feel good, man. We know they was the head dogs in the division. We know they got a good offense and a pretty good defense, and they depend a lot on the rookies, man. And it feels good to be 2-0 against those guys, because everybody wanted them to win, obviously, and it turned out different.
Sunday Night Football. We got a good one in Jerry's world. When famous Jameis and the Bucs head to Big D, the Cowboys' offense has been in decline the past 2 weeks, scoring 24 points, committing 5 turnovers, and converting 2 of 24 third down opportunities. Meanwhile, the Bucs have won 5 straight games for the first time since 2002. Another win would match the longest win streak in franchise history. During the win streak, Tampa has allowed just 12.8 points per game. Best in the NFL during that time. Stephen A., it's going to be good. Who you got?
I'm rolling with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for this one.
Yeah, you are.
Yes, I'm rolling with them. I know they've got the 21st ranked defense against the run. I'm aware of that. But I'm looking at this defense right now since week 10, this 5-game winning streak that they've been on. Fewest points allowed, most takeaways, and, of course, they've allowed the lowest passer ratings. And I think that the Dallas Cowboys have been struggling offensively. They haven't been putting up a boatload of points. So I can see this being one of those defensive battles. I can see this Tampa defense getting in the face of Dak Prescott. I can see this Tampa defense neutralizing the Dallas Cowboys with the run somehow, some way. And I think this could be a relatively low-scoring game, which to me will play right into Tampa's hands. I expect it to be a dogfight. I expect it to be something that comes down to the wire. But I think Tampa Bay will find a way to get the lead late. Once they have the lead, it will be Dak against that defense. And I think for the second week in a row, a defense is going to come through against the Dallas Cowboys, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to win this game.
Tampa can play defense. Their offense is uneven, though. Maybe enough to tip it in Dallas's direction. And, in fact, I'm picking Dallas, but for a bigger reason than that, Stephen A. I used to talk about the Lakers front office when I was doing Max and Marcellus, the radio show in Los Angeles, and the Lakers played on our station, and we talked a lot of Lakers, as you can imagine, in L.A., And I used to think that maybe the Lakers had Mr. Magoo'd their way into a bright future. And by that I mean, remember the cartoon Mr. Magoo, the little old blind guy who would just kind of walk through a construction site and the girders would just miss smashing him and everything, and he thought something else was going on. His whole reality was different, and in the end, everything wound up fine. He just got lucky, Mr. Magoo. I used to think that was the Lakers front office. Boy, look at this bright future they have. They Magoo'd their way into it. Every decision they made was the wrong one, but it turned out right. And the whole time, they didn't even realize what was happening. And I think that may be going on with Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. I think he may have Magoo'd his way into motivating the team to rally around Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott, no matter what you want to say about the allegiances on the team to Tony Romo and the veterans and a split locker room and divided and blah, 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 and controversy, the owner wants Romo to be the quarterback, all that stuff, whatever. They're 11-2. Against non-Giants teams, they're 11-0. And they've been balling all season. This is a little blip on the radar against what now looks like an elite defense, the New York defense. They lost a very close game. And by the way, their first loss to the Giants, week 1, was also a very close game. Could have gone either way. And I think there has to be a recognition in that locker room that Dak has helped get them there. And now he's under fire, in a sense, because the owner has created some controversy. I think that actually serves to motivate the team to rally around Dak Prescott. As a result, I like the Cowboys because Jerry Jones may have Magoo'd his way into a win here.
Well, basically, you're thinking that your prediction is right and I'm wrong because of Mr. Magoo. Good luck with that. We'll find out.
Magoo always came out good in the end.
Oh, you two are the best. Let's stay in the NFC East. Josh Norman is facing his former team on Monday Night Football, and he hasn't forgotten about the way he was treated on his way out of town.
When that situation came up, it was totally like out of left field. It just went downhill from there. It almost felt like I was stabbed in the back in a way. But, I mean, at the same time, I'm not saying that he probably meant to do that in that way. It was just probably the business aspect of it and the money factor and what he believed and how he learned how to do things. I'm not being a dead horse or nothing about saying none of this stuff, but, you know, he didn't draft me. He didn't bring me in. Marty Herney did. So at the end of the day, you know, I had no ties to that. And I understand that, and I get it, and I got fired. So I kind of taking it like that.
There's no denying that the Panthers' defense has not been the same without him. Norman says he was stabbed in the back. Max, do you agree with that?
Yes, he clearly was stabbed in the back. Look, he's a top 3 player on a team that made the Super Bowl, on a defense that made the Super Bowl, on a really good defensive team. And he finds out without a phone call or a discussion, just driving down the street one day, that they just release him unceremoniously. That's a backstab. And yes, NFL teams can do that, and the NFL is a ruthless business. It's more meritocratic, I think, than any other major American team sport because the fewer guaranteed contracts for fewer years, because it's a full contact sport. The players are really just seen as commodities, as pieces on a chessboard and largely interchangeable, and there's very little loyalty to players from the teams. But just because you can do something and just because it is a ruthless business doesn't mean that when you actually do stab a player in the back, it's a good look. It's not. It's a bad look. It's a bad look for Carolina because Josh Norman got it right. He described, it seems to me, what it was.
He was stabbed in the back, but not for the reasons you mentioned. He was stabbed in the back because here's the epitome of being stabbed in the back. You go out there, you play like an all-pro. Your defense is ranked 26th in the league, 11th against the pass. You're now ranked 26th in the league, 30th against the pass. Here's the biggest thing, though. It would be one thing if you just let him walk away and didn't make an offer. They made an offer to Josh Norman and then didn't give him a chance to respond to it before they took it off the table and said you can go on your merry way because they didn't like the way he and his agent who was negotiating on his behalf were negotiating. Josh Norman is a guy out of Coastal Carolina who elevated himself up from the practice squad to being an all-pro cornerback in the NFL. He works himself up to a point where he can at least have a discussion about being paid on a marquee level. And because you were offended at his aggression in pursuing what he believed his market value to be, you didn't even have the decency, Dave Gettleman, to do what most executives do, if not all of them. This is our final offer. Take it or leave it. They didn't do that. What they said was, we're going to take the offer off the table. Be gone. You can go on your merry way. And that could have potentially hurt his market value if you didn't have somebody desperate for a name cachet kind of individual like Josh Norman and owner Daniel Snyder in the nation's capital. That's what saved him. Not to say that others weren't going to come and offer him something, but $75 million with $50 million guaranteed after Carolina kicked you to the curb and allowed information to sift outside of their franchise, indicating that you could have been problematic in the locker room. That's how Josh Norman was compromised.
That doesn't add up for me.
That's how he was stabbed in the back.
Okay, fine. I understand that additionally hurts Josh Norman if his market value is hurt, but it doesn't add up from the Carolina Panthers' point of view. Why wouldn't they want another team spending as much money as possible on Josh Norman? Their antipathy towards Josh Norman should not, be outweighed, or rather, should not be outweighed by their fact, or should be outweighed by the fact that they want another team with cap problems. They don't want another. They don't hate Josh Norman so much, or are so put off by his desire of a big contract that they want another team underpaying for him and getting a good deal on him. They want another team overpaying for him.
Once again, you're missing the point. I never said that's what they wanted. I said they allowed information to sift out about him. Ultimately, that was something that could have potentially damaged his reputation and hurt his market value. I didn't say they did it on purpose for that intent. I said their actions or their negligence towards addressing him with the professionalism he deserved and earned, and which is also customary in the sport of football, was not something they exercised.
Is that a backstab?
That's what I said.
A backstab implies malicious intent, and it implies malice. Is that a backstab, or is that a poorly run organization?
Well, you can call it whatever you want. I'm saying to you, it was something they should not have done, because one of their own who played well and went all out for them deserves to be treated better than that.
About that, we agree. Of course, my reasons are better.
You are so disrespectful.
He is going to fall off a cliff.
Shut the hell up.
That's not even close to my best.
They're wrong. And I don't give a damn that they agree with me or not.
It's that time of the show. This is where Stephen A. gives us his final words in the final take of the week. Stephen A., the floor is yours.
Thank you, Molly. You know, when we learned yesterday that Craig Sager was gone from us all, obviously our hearts ached for his family, his friends, his loved ones. And we thought about the NBA community, because obviously as a sideline reporter for TNT, he did such a phenomenal job dating back to as early as 1981. We think about that, and we thought about the NBA community, but what I think that on a day like today we also need to think about is the sports world overall and how much he's impacted us all, but not just him. When I thought about Craig Sager passing away, I also thought about my man Stuart Scott, who passed away in January of 2015 at the age of 49. I thought about John Saunders. No, he did not pass away from cancer, but he's gone from us nonetheless at age 61. I'm thinking about guys that were fixtures in the world of sports that had such a profound impact on the lives that they touched because of how enthusiastic they were about doing their job, how enthusiastic they were about living life, and how often they implored so many people that they ran across to do just the same, to never take life for granted, to treat each day with the grace, with the desire, with the gratitude that it deserves, understanding that life isn't promised to any of us, and neither is obviously tomorrow. And when we think about a guy like Craig Sager, he reminded me of Stuart Scott. He reminded me of John Saunders. He reminded me of Jimmy Valvano and all the other iconic figures I believe to be iconic figures in the world of sports who lived a life covering games, but treated life just the same, understanding that as precious as it was, it's also there to be appreciated and enjoyed. And now that we think about Craig Sager's passing, let's remember that more so than anything else. He's special to us all. He meant so much to us all because of how often he reminded us of how precious life is and how it would be a shame for us not to feel about life the same way that he did.
It is, and we need to always enjoy the moment. Well said, Stephen A. Sometimes these final takes provocative and sometimes leaving us reflecting on our own lives and potential legacy. To see more Final Take, head to our Facebook or Twitter pages. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you on Monday. The guys will be in studio with Donovan McNabb. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Catch First Take weekdays, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific on ESPN2. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the games, and we'll see you all on Monday.
Bowl season kicks off Saturday with a triple header. Coverage of the Gildan, New Mexico Bowl begins at 2 Eastern, followed by the Raycom Media Camellia Bowl and the R+L Carriers New Orleans Bowl. It's bowl season on ESPN Radio.